Hi everyone, my name is Kara and I'm a PhD student. I'm studying civil engineering at the Colorado School of Mines. And today I wanted to discuss the financial aspects, like will doing a PhD make me rich? Will doing a PhD make me poor? What do the career prospects look like after a PhD versus with a bachelor's, especially in like a STEM focus? What is the opportunity cost of doing a PhD? How can I think about the financial aspects of going into industry versus staying in academia, getting a master's versus a PhD, and things like that. My degrees are all in civil engineering. I got a bachelor's in civil engineering. I graduated in August of 2020, and then I went straight into my PhD program. At my school, we have what's called a master's along the way. The requirements for a master's and a PhD overlap a lot. A master's you need like 24 credits and a PhD you need like 72. But the actual classes that you need are very similar. As I pursue my PhD, I am fulfilling also the requirements of a master's, including the classes that I would take and like the research credits and everything, the seminars. So as I pursue my PhD, I've already fulfilled all the requirements for a master's. And so when I get my PhD, when I'm awarded the degree, I will also be awarded a master's degree that I got along the way of my PhD. So if I were to drop out of my PhD now and not get the PhD degree, I would still get a master's degree because I already met all of those requirements. So I think that's something important to consider, whether or not your PhD program will at some point have a milestone of now you've earned a master's. Some of my friends are in the materials science PhD program here, and we don't offer a materials science master's. So if they were to not finish their PhD, they would just have a bachelor's. They would not get any more like credit for doing a partial PhD. For me, if I did a partial PhD and dropped out, I could still get a master's. So in the STEM fields, most anyone can benefit from getting a master's. You probably will get paid a little bit more. You probably will advance a little bit faster. For your professional engineering license, you need education plus experience. I'm pretty sure that this applies to all engineering disciplines where you get a PE license, a professional engineering license. So if you have a bachelor's from an ABET accredited school, you need 4 years of experience to earn your professional engineering license. So you need 4 years of mentorship by another PE who is going to like validate your experience and say, this person through the training that I gave them and the work that I've observed is ready to bill themselves as a professional engineer, and then you can take the exam. So if you have a bachelor's, you need 4 years of experience. If you have a master's, you only need 3 years of experience because it's basically like 1 extra year of schooling that reduces the amount of experience that you need. So getting a master's, especially a 1-year master's, I think is always a good like timeline choice if you can afford to pay the tuition, because 1 year extra of schooling reduces the experience that you need to get the same license. So that's cool. And then with a PhD degree, you only need 1 year of experience to get your PE license. So if I was to finish my PhD and go into industry, I would only need to work for 1 year before getting my PE. And that's like a huge milestone in an engineer's career. That's usually like a big pay increase, promotion, etc. And then you can start like stamping your own designs instead of having someone else always have to verify them. You can start saying like, in my professional engineering experience, I think this is right and I'm gonna put my name on it. So now that we have discussed the logistical considerations of a higher degree in engineering, let's get into the finances because I think this is extremely juicy. Is an engineering PhD profitable? The opportunity cost of a PhD. So to recap, I graduated with my bachelor's in civil engineering in May of 2020. I had one job offer at this time from a company that I had interned with the previous year. The job offer was for $65,000, which I felt was pretty okay. Not like super high, but I think I felt satisfied but not like thrilled with that amount of money. In the engineering professions, civil engineering is generally the lowest paid type of engineering. And so I think making like $60,000 to $70,000 was expected when I came out of school. Some of my friends who were in other disciplines of engineering, like electrical engineering, the salary range is more like $70,000 to $80,000 coming out of school. But that's like just overall a higher paid type, like specialty of engineering, and that is why they would get paid more. So in 2020, I had a job offer of $65,000 from a company in industry. And this was for a land development firm where I would have been doing AutoCAD type of designs for site planning and construction drawings, and I would have been pursuing my PE license in around like 2024. For the industry track, I'm going to assume that I would have gotten 10% raises each year. That's like a pretty generous assumption. However, my partner is an electrical engineer, and he has experienced some pretty extreme wage jumps just because the last 4 years have been so weird with COVID and like super high inflation and everything like that. So one of his annual raises was a base like cost of living increase of 15% plus his performance raise. So I don't think that assuming a 10% year-on-year raise is like too out of the norm for the past 3.5 years. I think in general, expecting a 10% raise each year is pretty presumptuous, or like it's a pretty high bar to set for yourself. But for the purposes of this calculation, I think it's accurate, and that's what I'm going to use. So keep that in mind. It's a little bit of a generous interpretation of my potential salary if I had taken an industry track. August of 2020, I started my PhD. I was making at that time $28,800 per year, which was $1,200 per check, and I get paid twice a month. Whereas if I had taken the industry job, my total salary, not including bonuses or anything, would have been $65,000. So in the year of 2020, my opportunity cost was $36,200, which is a lot. Not even gonna lie. So in 2021, I got a raise, but I didn't like negotiate for it or ask for it. I just automatically not automatically, but my boss gave me $50 more per check. So that would be a total salary of $30,000 for me in 2021 in my PhD. Whereas if I had gotten a 10% raise from my salary in 2021 in industry, would have been $71,500. These are approximate figures for the 10% raises, just FYI, to the nearest half a thousand, to the nearest $500. So in 2021, the gap widens between academia and industry. My opportunity cost for the PhD was $41,500. And that's the gap between what I made in my PhD and what I could have been possibly making in an industry job. In 2022, I asked my boss for a raise for the first time. I was extremely nervous, but it did pay off. So before, I was getting paid $1,250 per check, or $2,500 a month. And since I negotiated for a raise, this was when inflation was so high, I couldn't afford gas, or groceries. And so I negotiated for a raise of $200 per check, which gave me a total salary of $34,800 in 2022. Just to put that in perspective, my net take-home pay per check was $1,269, so my take-home pay per month was approximately $2,500 total. And I live in Denver, which is an extremely high cost of living city. Not extremely high, but a high cost of living city. My rent at this time, I was splitting a 2-bedroom with 3 people total, and my rent was $500, which was the saving grace. That's the only reason that I could afford to live where I did, because I was sharing a 2-bedroom with 3 people. In 2022, my computed industry salary would have been approximately $79,000, which gives 2022 a total opportunity cost of $44,200, which, rip, tear. All right, moving on to 2023. I got another small raise in 2023 of $50 a month. Woo! $600 a year to bring my total salary in 2023 to $35,400. In my computed industry salary, I would have been paid approximately $86,500, which gives us a total opportunity cost for 2023 of $59,600. Ouch. In 2024, I got another small raise from my boss, which brings us to making $36,000 a year here. So after, basically 4 years of experience in this job, my final salary is $36,000, which is pretty normal, I think, for a PhD student. I'll link some more PhD students like income reports below, but the actual stipend for PhD students is usually like around $30,000. Yeah, you shouldn't expect to be making a lot of money. You should expect to be, basically a starving student. So some of my fellow PhD students have families and, children to support and things like that, or send money home to their families abroad, and that gives me so much anxiety. I feel like I'm already stretched so thin, and I am in arguably like a really fantastic financial position compared to, others. So anyways, my computed industry salary in 2024 would be approximately $95,000, and that's assuming 10% raises year on year, starting from $65,000 in 2020. So for 2024, my computed opportunity cost is $59,600, which is obviously the greatest divergence in this video so far. But so total for the 4 years of a PhD, and this is if you take 4 years for your PhD, which is, I think, a very optimistic timeline, especially in like life sciences and things like that. 6 years is not uncommon. My professors are like a little bit skeptical, I think, of me graduating in 4 years, so everyone cross your fingers for that. But my total opportunity cost for 4 years of doing a PhD instead of working in industry is $181,500, which, ouch. One other important thing to keep in mind is that my tuition was paid this whole time, which is like another part of my total compensation. Obviously, I'm not seeing that money, but it is like investing in my professional and personal development. Even if you include that, the tuition at this school is around $20,000 a semester. And so if you multiply that by 8 semesters, that's $160,000 of tuition costs that I am receiving. But even if you include that in the opportunity cost, you're still getting a negative number for the opportunity cost of $21,500. So keep that in mind. A PhD is not going to make you rich, but it might be worth it. During my PhD, I also brought in extra income through a variety of different jobs. One of my jobs was to create open educational resources for the Writing Center here on campus, and for that I was paid $500 a semester, and that was like a contract work. So for the work product of one open educational resource with a video, an activity, a handout, and like the lesson to go along with it, I was paid $500. So that was kind of a cool thing to add to my resume, and every extra dollar helps, obviously. So another source of income was awards from conferences. There is a conference that's held on this campus that is pretty generous with the award dollars, and I've won the first year I won a second place poster award, and I received $200, and then the next year I didn't get any awards, but then this year I received first place oral presentation award, which I received $250 for. There are a few opportunities throughout the year at conferences like this to earn money based on your performance, and it's usually around the like $200 to $300 range. Again, that's not like a huge source of income or anything. It's more like, oh, now I can treat myself to like 2 new pairs of jeans because I won this conference presentation thing. So I worked as a tutor during my PhD, for which I was paid $20 an hour. I usually only did this like once a week, off and on, as students contacted me for tutoring. So this is like a really intermittent source of income. But if you were like super motivated and business minded to expand your tutoring business, that could expand into a solid source of income, since the hourly wage is pretty high. Additionally, in the beginning of my PhD, I did a lot of door dashing. I was a dasher, so I picked up DoorDash orders from the restaurant and drove it to people's houses. I did this because I wasn't making enough money to survive, and for that I was paid around $400 per week. There's a lot of other things to consider if you're going to start a gig side hustle like that, like the wear and tear on your car, and since you're an independent contractor, you have to pay a lot of extra taxes. You have to pay the upkeep on all of your equipment. So like, am I gonna have to get an oil change more often? Or how expensive is gas? Like, does that make it worth pursuing this opportunity with my specific circumstances, etc. The major source of extra income during my PhD is internships. So I did one internship in the summer of my third year of my PhD, so last summer. Internships are a great way to earn extra money during your PhD. In my internship, I worked at a consulting firm in downtown Denver. I made $30 an hour and I worked 40 hours a week. So that's $1,200 a week. For the 12-week summer semester, I made $14,400 by working full-time at my internship. If I had been doing my PhD during that time, I would have made $8,850. So you can see kind of the pay disparity between an academic job and an industry job. That was like my first taste of what it would be like to make industry money. So an internship is a great way to earn extra money and also add lines to your CV, get more experience, understand what you want to do. So I highly recommend, if you have the opportunity to do an internship during a graduate degree, I absolutely would recommend it. I think it provides a lot of clarity and the money is, a huge bonus. So would recommend. Let's discuss some future career prospects. So right now I'm in the last semester of my PhD, hopefully, fingers crossed. And so I'm entertaining job offers from, places that I would like to work. Okay, so after I finish my PhD, I have a few different career tracks that I'm considering. One of them is to work in consulting again as a geotechnical engineer, like what I did in my internship this summer. Consulting is really fast-paced. You learn a lot because you work on a lot of different projects. You have external clients, so you bill by the hour, which I think is kind of huge for work-life balance, being able to bill by the hour instead of by the job. So I would still be working as a civil engineer. A geotechnical engineer is my specialty. That's like within the umbrella of civil engineering, which is still one of the lower paid types of engineering, so keep that in mind. But if I was to go into consulting, the anticipated salary would be around $85,000. Another career track that I could pursue is staying on the academic path. It's called doing a postdoc. So after you get your doctorate, it's post-doctorate study. And that's kind of like a stepping stone between a PhD student and a professor. A postdoc has a lot more responsibility. Maybe they would mentor undergraduates or PhD students. You kind of start leading your own projects, maybe work more on proposals and grants. So it's like a great way to get more training sort of between a PhD student and a professor. It is a real job. It's not a student anymore, but it is definitely lower paid. It's like, since it's on the academic side, it's lower paid. A normal postdoc at like a university, I would be expecting to make like around $65,000. But the jobs that I'm looking at are at a national lab, and they pay, I think, quite a lot better than a university would. And so at the national lab, postdocs are paid approximately $85,000 to $90,000, which is quite generous for a postdoc. And then my last option is to work in a government job. I really like the idea of working for the government because of the stability and the resources that the government has for engineering is, orders of magnitude more than like a regular company would have, since, the US is huge. So the government job that I'm looking at would be a GS11 grade, which I think that's a great way to be paid what you're worth as a PhD student. They pay you based on your education and experience. So since you have so much more education, the pay is usually sort of reflective of that. Whereas I feel like in consulting, especially, I'm not really being paid more. I wouldn't really be paid more because of a PhD. It would probably be, I have a few more years of education, but I still don't really have any experience. And so I would be paid kind of maybe like an entry-level plus engineer, like a little bit more than your average entry-level engineer, but not like, a whole lot more. So a government job is a great way, or being on the GS pay scale is a great way to sort of get a bonus for having a PhD, because it is like based on education and experience. So you would be slotted already into a higher tier rather than starting at more of an entry-level type of job. you have a bachelor's, you start out as a GS 7. If you have a master's, you start out as a GS 9. And if you have a PhD, you start out as a GS 11. So that's 7, 9, 11 is how the grades go in terms of increasing degrees. And then if you get a PE license, you're eligible for grade 12, so GS 12. The actual pay of a GS 11 depends on where you live and where the job is, what type of job it is, etc. The type of job that I'm looking at has a special pay scale. So for a GS 11, for that special pay table, it would be $98,000. My career tracks for post-PhD, Kara, are to stay in academia and do a postdoc, which at a university would be around $60,000 to $65,000, and at a national lab would be around $85,000. 2, go into consulting, which I think I would be paid around $85,000 for that. Or 3, to work at a government and get paid according to the GS pay scale. For a GS 11 with a special pay rate of hydroelectric projects, that would be $98,000. So if we compare this to my projected industry salary, I projected that I would be making around $95,000 in 2024 if I had gotten a 10% year-over-year raise, which is a pretty generous assumption, but also in line with what I've seen during the sort of COVID aftermath times of my friends' salaries. My projected industry salary would be $95,000 in 2024, and I think I'll be close to that. I think around $85,000 to $95,000 is a good estimate for how much I'll be making after my PhD. So I'm really relieved actually that it's sort of in line with how much I would be possibly making if I went the industry track. I was worried that a PhD would set me back even in terms of earning potential, like total salary. But in my case, it seems like, I did have the opportunity cost of diverging wages during while I was doing a PhD versus what I would be making in industry. But it does seem like those two lines caught up, and now here going forward, I should be comparable between academia and industry in terms of my salary. So obviously there's a ton of things that can affect these types of calculations, what type of engineering you're doing and what types of jobs you would be able to have afterwards. Like for example, a biology PhD, maybe if you went to work for big pharma after, you would be making, well into the $100,000s of dollars right after your PhD. If you do a PhD and something in your project can help a company out, you'll also see a huge return on your investment. Like for example, some of my friends in the metallurgy department are working on extraction of rare earth metals from mining waste. And if you're able to improve or invent a process that can allow a company to extract more minerals from waste that they already have, they are going to be willing to pay you a lot more to come and implement that process at their mine. And that's a way that a PhD can be really economically beneficial to you, is if you study a problem that is profitable or that has the potential to make a company a lot of money, then you can later cash in sort of that knowledge and expertise that you have. Whatever. For my specific case, which I feel applies well to a generic project that you're not going to take any specific takeaways from, you're just going to have your transferable skills, you're going to go to a company and have 4 extra years of education, kind of entry-level experience still. Anyways, I hope this provided clarity to you. If you're struggling with this decision, I would love to talk more about it. Leave a comment or let me know down below. Yeah, I don't regret doing a PhD. I'm really happy that I started it. I'm really happy that I didn't quit throughout the way. I think I've learned so much about science and about people, managing my own time. It's a very independent job. I'm super excited to start my big girl job when I graduate. I can't wait to be making 3 times as much money as I'm making now. But yeah, the PhD was amazing. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It is very hard. It is not very well paid, but it is a wonderful experience. And yeah, I hope this helps someone. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you later. Bye.